Hi, this video is all about writing for purpose. This is where we're going to have a look at various different elements that highlight to the examiner that you've really thought about what you're writing. The first element we're going to talk about is how to structure it. So we can use a specific structure for each different purpose that we're asked to write. Next is going to be the tone that we write in, and that will be followed by the audience, so adapting our writing to suit the audience that we're writing for. And then we're just going to follow up with a sample plan where I'll show you how all these things kind of work together. And this plan shouldn't take you too long. It shouldn't take up loads of time in the exam or before your assignments. It should just be 5 to 10 minute thing. But hopefully, if you practice, you can kind of get all these things in, which will be good. So I've used two different purposes. I've used writing to argue and writing to describe, just to have an example. And as you can see, I've begun to plot the first kind of few paragraphs that I'd write. And as you can see, there's a really clear difference. If we have a look at number one, the first thing you would possibly do for writing to argue is to clearly state what you are arguing. Make your point really, really clear and make that known to the audience. Then number two, you'd give an example of a situation that supports your view. And then only later on would you address an opposing argument. But you'd only do that to state its flaws and kind of continue to kind of say why yours is the stronger choice. So you can see it's quite different. So it's writing to argue, we've got our viewpoint, but then writing to describe, we give an overview. So if we were to give an overview of like a theme park, okay, we might start writing to describe a theme park. We'll start with an overview, talking about it in general, then we'd move into this specific element of like different rides, different attractions. And then number three, we'd just try and follow that in a kind of logical point. Whereas writing to argue, you're looking for a kind of a much more kind of um, obvious start. You've got to really make yourself very, very clear, your point of view. Whereas to describe, you're just trying to give the information in as logical an order as possible. So whatever purpose you've been asked to write, they want to see at least some adaptation of your writing to suit what they've asked. And it depends. If you're writing for functional skills, this might be quite subtle. Whereas if you're writing for GCSE, if you're looking for the higher marks in particular, they'll be looking for you to, really kind of set yourself up really quite nicely. But in a general sense, in structure, I'd say as long as it's logical, then that would at least be, a pass grade. But then if you're looking for the higher above ones, then try kind of experimenting with things that might kind of make your argument all that stronger or make that description a bit more logical. Okay, next we're going to move on to tone. Okay, so I've given these two tones, so advise and argue, and you've got to choose the appropriate tone. They're not going to tell you which tone to write for, but they might say write to advise or write to argue. Okay, so if you are to advise, advising is quite a gentle form of writing. So you'd use an objective or an unbiased viewpoint, and we can see the example here. So if you were considering a change in career, there are several options you could choose. So you see the tone of that, it doesn't have a preference towards anything. They're not selling us anything. And if it does help you, this helps me. I think about someone who's writing to argue. I think of that the salesman coming to the door who's really, really convinced that their way of thinking is 100% correct. And we can see this in the next example. Okay, so if you want to change job, only one clear option remains: go into teaching. So you see, I've used a lot of short sentences. I've displayed a lot of confidence in my writing, and that's when you argue. Okay, so you don't need to write consistently, very, very aggressively. You can just pepper these in. It doesn't have to be, so aggressive that someone can't read it. But just as long as you display that confidence towards your general topic. So this is teaching. So whenever I'm talking about teaching, I want to be incredibly confident. Whereas if I'm advising, I want to be talking about different options, and I don't want to give preference to either one. I don't want to tell somebody what to do. But when you argue, sometimes you do tell somebody what to do. And that's perfectly fine. Even though it is a little bit aggressive, that's what they expect to see. Okay, next we're going to have a look at the audience. So sometimes I'll tell you who you're going to write for, and there's three main things that I think you should consider. So if you're going into GCSE, I'd say you consider all of these elements to at least some degree. But if you're functional skills, I think that the relationship will be the main one there. but we'll go into that a bit further. So age is important because younger audiences, they might respond to more of a relaxed tone. So if they said something like "write for your school magazine" and it's students who are going to be reading it, then you would use a tone that the same way you would talk to your fellows. But if they said write to a member of parliament or something, then you would use less colloquial language. And colloquial language is any language that is kind of slang or relaxed. Even words that are shortened, like "don't," is considered quite colloquial. It's okay to use it in small amounts in your more formal writing, but you tend to stick to the kind of more posh language if you're writing to a kind of more of a posh audience. Relationship. Now, this one is really quite key. So consider if you know the audience, would you use familiar language or not? How are you going to address that person? What impression are you trying to make? Are you trying to impress that person? Are you trying to inspire that person? And if you can show anything, any kind of adaptation of your language that might kind of justify this, then that would really get you very good marks. Final one is knowledge. So does the audience know about the topic, or are you introducing a new concept to them? Okay, so let's say if you're writing about social media. Now, some students, some younger audience know exactly what you mean about social media, and they know about Snapchat and Instagram. But if it's a slightly older audience, you might need to actually, you could put in brackets, Instagram, a photo sharing website kind of thing, or explaining that a little bit. And that it's difficult to try not to condescend or talk down to your audience, but sometimes having that awareness, like if you're writing to 7-year-olds, they're probably not going to know very kind of complex issues if you're writing about. So always kind of stick to that audience. It's very hard when it comes to language though, because most check your exam criteria and see if it is sophisticated language they're looking for. Which in most cases, then you will just have to stick to sophisticated language. But in terms of address and things like that, then those adaptations should make sense. Okay, so this is just like a sample plan that I made to show how I'd put all of these elements together. And like I said at the beginning, I don't want you to spend lots and lots of time on this. Trying to plan too much is a great way of killing time in your exam when you should be writing it. Okay, so this should be really kind of quick. This is a sample. Okay, so write a speech to a group of students that gets them to buy a brand of mobile phone that you represent. It's supposed to say, but it says present. So that's a bit of a typo on my part, sorry. Okay, so when you come across a question like this, you can get into the habit of underlining key things. So first of all, I'd underline speech. Okay, so speeches that tend to be quite emotional and inspiring. Okay, next, I want to kind of identify the audience, and you should have picked up the audience is students. And then the next one is what is the thing we're trying to get them to do? Or we're trying to persuade them, all right? Because we're getting them to buy a brand of mobile phone that you represent, it's supposed to say. So that means we're probably going to have to use quite forceful language. So I've used the purpose persuade. Persuade and argue are quite similar, and I've written my basic structure. I've just written 3 points about my basic structure. So number one, I want to make that big statement showing my point of view clearly, using powerful language about why my brand of mobile phone is so good. Number two, I want to compare other viewpoints and explain why other brands might be not so good. Number three, I want to build on those thoughts on the previous topic by reinforcing and just saying why mine is better. Okay, and that's just a simple structure just so that I know I definitely am trying to persuade. I've made a note of the tone. I want it to be quite forceful, forceful in confidence of the mobile phone brand. Yeah, I want to be kind as though it's in their best interest. So say things like, you must see that this mobile phone will really enhance your life, that this mobile phone is made for people like you, whereas the others wouldn't really suit you. They're not made for you. They're not made for your needs. They don't meet your needs quite as well. Audience. Okay, so audience. Remember, it's a group of students. In this case, I'm assuming that it's students of like a high school. So I'll say they're young adults. I can use modern references and play to their interests. So think, what would these young students be interested in? They do not know me. Okay, so I'm coming in as somebody who just represents a company, so I don't use over familiar terms. I might be kind of overly kind. Oh, thank you for your time, everyone. You know, knowledge. Final thing. They know what they want. Okay, young people know what they want, so I'll address this. Maybe I might even ask some rhetorical questions and then kind of answer them for you. You know, like what is the best features for you as a young person? Question mark, and then I'd answer it. It's a bit difficult to do that because sometimes you have to assume things, but even just by attempting that, you'll get higher marks. Okay, finally, guys, if you did like that, please like and subscribe and check out Right On Resources for any more videos or resources based on English. Thanks a lot, guys.